how two of us, two friends of mine and I, went up to the division headquarters, conned them out of 4 surfboards, drove them back to where we were at, built a lifeguard tower, and set up surfing in Vietnam. And we had it in the back of one of these 3-quarter PCs, which I used to drive. So when you used to go in Vietnam, and in Vietnam everybody hitchhiked, right? You either hitchhiked on the road or you flew in helicopters, right? So going into Da Nang, you got all these guys going into Da Nang, and we're going out there. And we had the surfboards in the back of the truck, so they were like, and it was these guys who were coming up out of the field are looking at this truck full of surfboards going that way, and they're just lined up. It's like pandemonium as we drove by, because it was like the most bizarre thing they had seen. So so I remember getting those surfboards, and I was thinking this too. I remember a couple of the Vietnamese working on the base, and I remember some of those, and Chu Hoi. Do you know what Chu Hoi is? No. I was just wondering if he had mentioned these things. The Chu Hoi program was that the Americans would drop things, and they would invite the Viet Cong, which is mostly those folks I was fighting. I wasn't fighting the NBA, but the Viet Cong. And they would invite the Viet Cong to come to our side.
Oh.
So the Chu Hoi program, right?
Yeah.
And so they would come to our side, and then they would end up in different battalions as guys who would go out on patrols with us. And I remember working with them, 3 of these Chu Hois, who we had. It's odd the amount of respect we had for the Viet Cong. Really, it's an odd and unusual kind of myth. But so we had these 3 guys working with us, and I remember going out on patrol with them, 2 of them one night. And I'd been there for a while. I'd been there maybe 6-7 months, right? And I was aware, and it's a night patrol, and we know what the hell we're doing, and we know that we're not in a dangerous area, but it's not safe either. And so we set up in this field, this ambush in the field, right? We don't want to do anything. And I had given one of the Chu Hois some gum. You want some? Yeah. He said, no. And he's over in a hole over there, and we're all quiet, doing what we're doing. And you can hear him chewing this gum. Wow. It's like, and it's like, what in the hell are you, man? Shh, quiet, VC. No VC. And all that. And it's like, yeah, of course he knew there weren't any there, and there weren't any there, and he was just out there doing this thing. It's odd moments like that come to mind, or the translate. There was a man who was acting as a translator for the battalion, and he worked with what was the intelligence unit at some point. And I remember we used to hang around and talk to him. He's this school teacher. He's older than even any of the grunts there nearby. He's this school teacher, and we used to talk about the war. And he's just nice, wonderful, kind man who was in this thing. And you could get a sense that he really didn't want to be in this thing. We were talking about getting drafted. And he said, "Oh, you were drafted?" I said, "Yeah, I got drafted." "How long?" I said, "A couple of years." He kind of laughed, and he said, "I got drafted too." And I said, "How long?" He said, 9 years. I mention this as being kind of unusual, because Marines were never allowed to go into the cities, right? The Army and the Air Force could go into the cities. They could go into Saigon. They could go into Da Nang. They could wander around. But it was illegal for Marines to do that. Even the village that was outside our base camp, the only time we could go through there legally was on patrol, right? So we had an odd and distant relationship to a lot of the Vietnamese. We couldn't. I used to drive around Da Nang, but I could never stop and wander around because I'd get arrested, right? So there's always a way in which Marines had this kind of, or at least enlisted Marines of my rank were always at a distance. So that's why these stories about talking to these guys are kind of keep coming to mind these days. But yeah, then there are the other ones. there are all the combat stories, right? There are all of those, which are always bizarre. So
How many combats were you involved in?
yeah, not as many other people, but often enough, maybe a half dozen times, maybe a little more. I mean, where people were really shooting in my direction. So, and mostly small arms fire. I mean, we never got mortared. We got over. The biggest thing I was ever in was the battalion base camp, which is about 600-800 people. It got overrun. So that meant if you've seen these movies where people got overrun at night, so that they blew holes in the wire at 4 different places, and something like 21 guys died that night, and maybe a considerable bit more were wounded. And it was I remember it as a long 3-day thing, because I can actually even tell you the date when it was over, because I celebrate it every year. On the morning of May 5th, myself and about 4 or 5 of us were sitting on the beach, leaning up against the building that had been blown up. We had been fighting for, that night we had been fighting for at least 8 hours, and we'd already been in other things for 2 days, so it was all over. We're sitting, it looked like a bad, we were laughing, it looked like a bad World War II movie, because we were up against something, we had helmets. And over there, right over there, are 3 dead VC soldiers, and we're watching the sun come up out of the South China Sea. And it's like that moment at which you know, okay, I've gotten through this one, and there's that exhilaration that you're alive, and you're sitting on a beach, and it's warm, and it's May, and most of the guys you know are alive, and that's what happens if you fuck up, because you're going to be dead. And you go, okay, this is a birthday. This is a birthday. Right? Of course, I had. Let me see. May. I had after that 10 more months to do. So, but at that moment, I said, well, okay, this is it. And that was a night. That kind of all of the things I was in, that was probably the worst, which is compared again to guys who were in Wei, or guys who were up at Quezon, or those places which were going on around the time I was there. They look back and go, yeah, that's an afternoon's work. But it kind of impressed me as being, so this is what war is like. To explain where I was, I'd have to tell you, I was with an outfit that was called Amtracs. Amtracs are these big things that they're supposedly land Marines on. They look like big Cracker Jack boxes with treads. And if you've ever seen a Vietnam movie, you'll see them. They're supposed to have troops on the inside. So I was with Amtracs. I didn't drive them. I was doing something else with them. But to have Amtracs, that's why you're at the beach, and you have what's called a huge tractor park, where you park all of these things, because there's 4 or 5 to each company. And so what they had done is they had overrun us to blow up the Amtracs, because the Amtracs cost $150,000. And when the Amtracs are parked, they're parked next to each other with the fronts down, right? Okay, so we're being hit. It's the middle of the night. You get up, you throw yourself out of the bunk, you throw yourself out of the hooch, and part of where my squad was supposed to go, the guys I was with in the squad, we were supposed to go down to around the command post, which was overlooking the tractor park. So, small arms were coming in this way, and you're running around. It's the middle of the night. You don't know who's firing here. You don't know who's coming around the corner, because that's the scary thing about being overrun, right? Everybody is going to their posts, but everybody is running. So you're running this way, and somebody can come around the corner, and that can be one of these,